We all want to have the right to be safe.
We should learn from history. Like this is what happens to marginalised groups. And it's really just about making it a less bureaucratic process for people to go through to get their gender recognised.
So that your birth certificate and driver's licence and those kinds of admin things that we all need can be done in a much more humane and efficient way.
It not being dependent on having a diagnosis of a psychiatric disorder, it not being dependent on a medical process.
So then I was confused, it's like, why are we talking about toilets?
All kinds of other topics are being drawn in ways that are super unhelpful.
If you want to understand what's happening at the moment, you need to understand the GRA has got nothing to do with safe spaces. It's got nothing to do with people's rights to access spaces.
It should be all a kind of positive journey, but it's really not being, because we're being set back, you know, years if not decades.
There might be some people out there who would say, hey, I am not transphobic and I understand the GRA consultation isn't supposed to be about this, but given we're having this conversation, I have legitimate concerns and I'd like to understand what's going on. In my role as an expert on these topic areas, I would say that, of course, there's no space in society where sexual violence can't happen. Sexual violence happens where human beings are. So is it possible to be sexually assaulted in a public toilet? Absolutely yes. Is it possible to be sexually violated by a member of the trans community? Absolutely yes. Sexual violence is perpetrated by every single demographic out there. It is perpetrated by cis men, by cis women, by trans men, by trans women, by people who are non-binary. It's perpetrated by children and older people. It's perpetrated by priests. It's perpetrated by every single demographic in the country. So if you want to say there's one incident or a number of incidents of trans women being dangerous or public toilets being an area of risk, they're always going to find those anomalies. That is not the conversation that we need to be having about the safety of spaces in this country. In the same way that it would be true to say that the GRA consultation has been hijacked and turned into a debate about something it was never set up for, it's also true to say that conversations about sexual violence are getting hijacked by this debate because they're being pushed back decades. Those kinds of conversations, which really are kind of stranger danger conversations, really distract us from the fact that the truth of the matter is that women and children are not safe in their own homes. That's one of the most dangerous places in societies. We should be focusing on those issues instead of adding fuel to the fire of the stranger danger debate.
Everything's getting so much better and so much worse at the same time. And that's a very weird time to be.
It's so sad when these conversations become competitive. It's like, your presence here threatens my safety, as if you have a greater right to safety than the other person.
I think the thing to think back to is how gay men were being treated back in the 80s, because this moral panic has so much similarity with that. It's like being treated as sexual predators when there's no evidence for it, being treated as danger to children, this idea that any teaching about trans or gender diversity in schools is dangerous and will make all kids want to be trans.
Those of us who are passionate and work in or are activists in the sexual violence space, the domestic abuse space, understand the power of silence. Those of you who are not standing up next to your trans siblings on this issue, your silence is speaking volumes, and it's allowing other people to use the issues that we all care about and hijack our debate and send that debate back years.
We should learn from history. Like this is what happens to marginalised groups, and the stigma that results from it results in mental health problems, high rates of suicide attempts. You know, we see all of that in young trans people.
My friends who are trans, they're exhausted. They're exhausted and they're looking to their left and they're looking to the right and they're wondering where their allies are. It's time to step in and be that ally.
If you can step in on Facebook or Twitter and say, oh, actually that's not true, here's a good web link, you know, then it means that trans people don't have to do it, and we're all just so exhausted and we've really had enough, and it just means so much.
As far as I'm concerned, our society will be safe exactly when a trans woman can walk around and feel safe and be safe in this society. That, to me, is a really important goal and aspiration, and this should be an issue that is uniting people who care about these issues, not an issue that should be dividing them at all.